the beeping came first. Steady, mechanical, relentless. Then the smell. Antiseptic mixed with something floral. Cheap perfume that didn't belong in a hospital room. My body felt heavy, like I'd been buried under wet sand. My eyelids refused to open. But my hearing, that came back sharp and clear. The accident had put me here. I remembered the screech of tires, the impact, glass shattering around me, then nothing. Now I was somewhere between sleep and consciousness, trapped in my own body, listening. The curtain rustled to my left. Footsteps. 2 sets. One I recognized immediately. Eric, my husband. The other was lighter, quicker, accompanied by a soft laugh I'd heard before but never paid attention to. "You know," the woman's voice said quietly, almost playful, "if this actually goes badly, you're looking at, what, 2 million? Maybe more?" Eric's response was a low chuckle, the kind he used when he thought no one important was listening. "Try closer to 5. The life insurance alone is 3.2. Then there's the trust fund, the properties, the investments her family set up. We'd be set for life, Claire." Claire. The name hit me like cold water. His colleague. The woman he'd mentioned casually over dinners. The one he said was just a work friend helping him with a project. The one I'd smiled at during company events, never once sensing anything wrong. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay still, to keep breathing evenly, to let them think I was still unconscious. Because if they knew I could hear them, I didn't know what they'd do. "Just pray she doesn't pull through," Claire said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than a scream. "I mean, I know that sounds awful, but we've been planning this for so long. It would almost be a waste if she recovered now." Eric laughed. Not the warm, affectionate sound I used to love. This was different, colder, sharper. I felt the bed shift slightly as he leaned closer to her, not to me. I could picture it without seeing. The way he'd rest his hand on her lower back, the way he'd tilt his head toward hers like they shared secrets the rest of the world wasn't smart enough to understand. "You're terrible," he said, but his tone was affectionate, proud even. And then I heard it, the soft sound of fabric rustling, a quiet sigh, the kind of intimacy that doesn't exist between colleagues. They were together, not just plotting, not just scheming. They were a couple, and I was the obstacle. My mind raced, pulling up memories I'd ignored. The late nights he claimed were work dinners. The weekends he said he needed to go into the office. The way he'd started looking at me over the past year, not with love, but with something closer to impatience. Like I was an investment that hadn't matured fast enough. How long had this been happening? Months? Years? Had any of it ever been real? I thought back to the beginning. We met at a charity gala 7 years ago. I was 26, freshly back from studying abroad, trying to figure out how to balance the weight of my family's name with my own identity. My parents had built an empire in real estate and finance, old money, carefully managed, passed down through generations, with the expectation that I'd protect it. Eric was different from the men in my social circle. He didn't talk about portfolios or legacy. He asked me about books I liked, places I wanted to travel, what made me laugh. He seemed genuinely uninterested in my last name, in the wealth that came with it. That's what made me fall for him. I thought I'd found someone who wanted me, not my inheritance. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony overlooking the coast. My parents had been hesitant, but I'd been so sure, so certain that love was enough. And now, lying here in a hospital bed, I realized I'd been the only one in love. He'd been calculating. She shifted beside him, and I heard the smile in her voice. "So what's the plan if she does wake up? Do we just keep playing the devoted husband routine?" Eric sighed, and I could almost see him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was thinking. "We adjust. I've been doing this for 7 years. I can keep it up a little longer if I have to. Besides, she trusts me completely. She always has. That's what makes this so easy." The words stabbed deeper than any physical pain from the accident. She trusts me. Past tense in his mind, but present tense in mine. Or it had been until 30 seconds ago. They stayed a few more minutes, their conversation drifting to logistics I could barely focus on. Insurance paperwork, estate lawyers, timelines. They spoke about my death like it was a project deadline. Then they left, and I was alone with the beeping monitor and the weight of everything I just learned. I didn't cry. Not then. My body was too shocked, my mind too busy racing through every interaction, every moment, every lie I'd swallowed without question. I lay there, eyes still closed, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Not here where I was vulnerable and weak. I was going to let him think I had no idea, let him believe his plan was still intact. And while he waited for me to die, I was going to dismantle everything he thought he'd inherit. Because if Eric wanted to play the long game, he was about to learn that I'd been raised by people who built empires, and I knew exactly how to protect mine. The next morning, a nurse came in to check my vitals. I stirred slowly, blinking like I was confused, disoriented. She smiled warmly and called for the doctor. Within an hour, Eric was at my bedside. His face was a perfect mask of concern, brow furrowed, eyes soft, hand reaching for mine like he'd been waiting desperately for this moment. "Laura," he breathed, relief flooding his voice. "Oh, thank God you're awake." I looked at him and saw a stranger, but I smiled weakly and squeezed his hand. "What happened?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You were in an accident," he said gently, brushing hair away from my face. "A car ran a red light. You've been unconscious for 2 days. We were so worried." "We?" I wanted to laugh. Instead, I let my eyes fill with tears and leaned into his touch like I believed every word. "I'm so glad you're here," I whispered. He kissed my forehead, and I felt nothing, just cold clarity beneath my skin. Over the next few days, I played the role of the recovering wife. Weak, grateful, dependent. I asked him to bring me things, to help me sit up, to read to me when I couldn't sleep. And he did it all with the patience of someone who thought the finish line was near. But I was watching. The way he hesitated before handing me my phone like he was worried I'd see something. The way he subtly redirected conversations when I asked about finances or paperwork. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes anymore. And then there was the day the doctor said I was improving faster than expected. Eric's face fell for just a second, a flicker of disappointment he couldn't hide quickly enough. I caught it. "That's wonderful news," he said, recovering with a tight smile. "I'm so relieved." But his hand, resting on the bed rail, clenched into a fist. He wasn't relieved. He was frustrated. Because I was supposed to die, and instead, I was getting better. That night, alone in my hospital room, I made a phone call. My family's lawyer, Richard Pemberton, had known me since I was a child. He answered immediately, his voice concerned. "Laura, I heard about the accident. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said quietly, my voice steadier than it had been all week. "But I need to see you, privately, as soon as I'm discharged." He paused, picking up the shift in my tone. "Of course. What do we need to discuss?" "Everything," I said. "My will, my insurance policies, my accounts. I need to make changes. Immediately." There was a long silence on the other end. Then he said carefully, "I'll have everything ready. Just tell me when." I gave him a date, a time, and explicit instructions. Eric couldn't know. No one could know. Not yet. When I hung up, I stared at the ceiling and let myself feel it. Not the fear, not the heartbreak, the power. Because for the first time since I woke up, I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the one writing the ending. And Eric had no idea what was coming. I was discharged on a Thursday morning. Eric drove me home, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my knee like he was the devoted husband everyone thought he was. The house felt different when we walked through the door. Or maybe I was different. Either way, nothing looked the same. He insisted I rest, fluffed pillows on the couch, brought me tea I didn't drink. I smiled and thanked him, playing my part perfectly. But inside, I was counting down hours because tomorrow, everything would change. The meeting with Richard was scheduled for 10 in the morning at his downtown office. I told Eric I had a follow-up appointment with my doctor. Just routine paperwork, I'd said, making sure everything's healing properly. He nodded, barely looking up from his phone, probably texting Claire. I'd stopped checking his messages days ago. I didn't need more proof. I already had everything I needed. When I arrived at Richard's office, he was waiting with a folder thick enough to contain my entire financial life. He stood when I entered, concern etched across his face. "Laura, are you sure about this?" I sat down across from him, calm and clear. "Absolutely. Walk me through it." Over the next hour, we dismantled Eric's access to everything. I removed him as the beneficiary on my life insurance policies, all $3.2 million redirected to a trust in my family's name. I revoked his power of attorney. I moved my personal accounts into structures he couldn't touch. I updated my will, ensuring that if anything happened to me, Eric wouldn't see a single cent. Richard made notes, asked clarifying questions, but mostly he just listened. When we finished, he slid the final documents across the desk for my signature. "If I may ask," he said gently, "what prompted this?" I met his eyes. Let's just say I woke up to a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. He didn't press further. He simply nodded, witnessed my signatures, and sealed everything in a legal envelope. "It's done," he said. Ironically, if anything were to happen to you now, Eric would have no claim, none. I felt the weight lift off my chest. The invisible chain I'd been carrying since the hospital finally snapped. "Thank you, Richard." He handed me a copy of everything. "Be careful, Laura. Men like him don't take loss well." "I know," I said, standing. "That's why I'm recording everything from here on out." His eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't argue. "Smart," he said simply. When I got home, Eric was in the kitchen making lunch. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, things he knew I liked. The performance continued. "How was the appointment?" he asked without turning around. "Fine," I said, setting my bag down carefully. "Just some forms to sign, nothing major." He glanced over his shoulder, and for a split second, I saw it. Suspicion, a flicker of doubt. But he recovered quickly, smiled, and plated the food. "Good. I'm glad everything's okay." We ate in silence. I watched him across the table, this man I'd shared a bed with for 7 years, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. That evening, I waited until we were alone in the living room. He was scrolling through his phone, half paying attention to the television. I sat across from him, my own phone in my hand, recording app already running in my pocket. "Eric," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He looked up, irritation flickering across his face before he masked it. "About what?" "About what you said in the hospital." His entire body went still. "What are you talking about?" I repeated his words back to him, slowly, deliberately. "If this actually goes badly, you're looking at what? 2 million? Maybe more." His face drained of color. "I don't know what you think you heard, but..." I wasn't finished. I continued, my voice steady. "Try closer to 5. The life insurance alone is 3.2. Then there's the trust fund, the properties, the investments her family set up. We'd be set for life, Claire." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Laura, listen." "No," I said, standing as well. "You listen. I heard everything. I know about Claire. I know you've been planning this. I know you married me for my money, not because you loved me. And I know you were hoping I wouldn't wake up.
His face twisted, panic shifting into anger. "You're insane. You are unconscious. You were drugged. You don't know what you think you heard." I held up my phone. "I've already spoken to my lawyer, Eric. I've removed you from everything. The insurance, the account, the will. You get nothing. And just so you know, I'm recording this conversation. If anything happens to me, anything at all, you'll be the first person the police investigate." He stepped toward me, fists clenched, and I saw it. The mask fully slipping, the rage he'd been hiding behind charm and patience for 7 years. "You can't do this," he hissed. "That's my money. I earned it." "By marrying me?" I asked coldly. "By lying to me for 7 years? By waiting for me to die?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because there was nothing left to say. No excuses that would work. No manipulation that would land. I'd stripped him of his leverage, and he knew it. "Get out," I said quietly. "Pack your things and leave. Tonight." "You can't kick me out of my own house," he spat. "This isn't your house," I replied. "It's mine. My family bought it. It's in my name. You've been living here as my guest. And now you're not welcome anymore." His jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. He stared at me for a long, tense moment, and I wondered if he'd try something. If the man who joked about my death might actually attempt to finish what the accident started. But then he saw my phone, still recording, still documenting, and he stepped back. "Fine," he said, voice shaking with fury, "but don't think this is over. You'll regret this." "I won't," I said simply, and I watched him walk upstairs, heard him slamming drawers, throwing things into a bag. 20 minutes later, he came back down, duffel in hand, face red with rage and humiliation. He paused at the door, looking back at me one last time. "I loved you," he said, and it almost sounded true. "No," I replied. "You loved what I could give you. There's a difference." He left without another word. The door slammed behind him, and the house fell into silence. I stood there for a long time, phone still recording, heart still steady. Then I walked to the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway, and I felt nothing but relief. Over the following weeks, I rebuilt. I changed the locks. I contacted a divorce attorney. I informed my family, who were horrified but supportive. My mother held my hand and said quietly, "I always felt something was off about him. I wished I'd trusted that instinct." "Me too," I admitted. "But I know now." Eric tried to reach out. Texts at first, apologies mixed with accusations, then calls I didn't answer, then emails I filtered into spam. Claire, apparently, distanced herself once she realized the money was gone. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved on to someone else, someone with better prospects. Eric's world, built entirely on the foundation of my wealth, crumbled quickly. He lost his apartment when he couldn't cover rent. His friends, most of whom were actually my friends, stopped returning his calls. His reputation, once that of the charming husband of a wealthy woman, became that of a gold digger caught red-handed. I didn't gloat. I didn't watch from the shadows with satisfaction. I simply moved forward. I started therapy to process the betrayal, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd missed the signs. I reconnected with old friends I drifted away from during my marriage. I threw myself into work with my family's foundation, finding purpose in projects that mattered. And 6 months later, I met someone new. Not at a gala, not through carefully curated social circles, at a bookstore, reaching for the same novel on a rainy afternoon. His name was Daniel. He was a teacher, thoughtful and kind, with no interest in my last name or my bank account. We talked for hours over coffee, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as an inheritance, not as a prize, just as Laura. I didn't rush into anything. I took my time, learning to trust again, learning to recognize red flags I'd once ignored. And Daniel was patient. He understood that I'd been hurt, and he never once made me feel like I owed him anything. One evening,
As we sat on my porch watching the sunset, he asked gently, "Do you ever regret how it ended? With Eric?" I thought about it. Then I shook my head. "No," I said. "I regret how long it took me to see the truth. But I don't regret leaving, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from someone who sees you as a transaction." He nodded, squeezed my hand, and we sat in comfortable silence. Meanwhile, Eric continued to unravel. I heard through the grapevine that he'd tried to contest the will changes, but Richard had ensured every document was airtight. He had no case, no leverage, no options. The last I heard, he was working a regular sales job, living paycheck to paycheck, the life he tried so hard to avoid by marrying me. And Claire? She'd married someone else, someone wealthier. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt free. Because revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about walking away and building a life so full, so rich, so genuinely happy that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. I didn't need Eric to suffer. I just needed him gone. And he was. If you're in a relationship where you're valued for what you bring, not who you are, please listen to that voice inside you, the one that whispers, "Something's wrong." Trust it. Because your worth isn't tied to your bank account, your inheritance, or what someone else can gain from you. Before you scroll, let me ask you something real. If you were in Laura's shoes, lying there, hearing the two people betraying you plot your death for profit, would you have opened your eyes right then and confronted them? Or would you have stayed silent, watched, gathered proof, and moved with strategy the way she did? Tell me in the comments. Your answer says more about your strength and your survival instincts than you think. And if this story hit you in the chest, share it, like it, and subscribe for more powerful tales that remind you to trust your intuition, protect your peace, and never apologize for choosing yourself.